Hey, Shalom, this is the brother Baya. Back here once again. Before I get started, like always, I want to give all praises and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rechaha Kodash. Double honors to my teachers, the elder apostles of Great Millstone, and Shalom to the hopeful elect. I want to get into one of the stories about King Uzziah. If you're not familiar with King Uzziah, he was one of the kings of Judah, the tribe of Judah from the nation of Israel. He became king at the age of 16, and he reigned as king for 52 years. The story I'm going to go into touches on how King Uzziah developed pride, all right, and an ego from being king, okay? And that's a normal attribute to adopt and to have when you're put in a throne seat, put in a kingly seat, and you have people practically worshiping you, honoring you, and always giving glory to you, right? If you're the king of a nation, you receive praise and honor all the time. And see, that's a tricky thing to deal with when you're in the flesh, all right? That's why it benefits us to be brought down to these low states that we're in, that the Lord brings us in, all right? These states of captivity, these states of oppression, and having other nations rule over us to where we can't even deliver ourselves out of captivity by our own strength. The only way we can get out of captivity is if we rely on the power of our Creator, Yahweh, and our Savior, Yahweh Shai. That's the only way we can get out of captivity. So you don't want to just jump into being a king, sitting on a throne and ruling. You want to develop patience. You want to develop humility, temperance. You want to have a charitable spirit, a diligent spirit into serving the Lord. You want to have the righteous attributes, the righteous fruits of the Spirit before you sit on the throne, so the throne will not pollute or won't pollute your mind or corrupt your mind and have you in a lofty and prideful spirit. We see that with Esau today. Esau is a very prideful individual, a very egotistical individual, a narcissist, everything above in wickedness, because he has not took the time or cared to learn the righteous attributes that the Most High requires for a righteous servant to learn before they rule. So let's touch on King Uzziah and how his pride led him to getting judged. This is 2 Chronicles chapter 26, verse 1. It reads, "Then all the people of Judah took Uzziah, who was 16 years old, and made him king in the room of his father Amaziah. He built Eloth and restored it to Judah. After that, the king slept with his fathers." 16 years old was Uzziah when he began to reign, and he reigned 52 years in Jerusalem. Right? I just told you that. His mother's name was also Jecoliah of Jerusalem. And he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his father Amaziah did. So in the beginning, as a young man, as a young king, he did what was right in the sight of Yahweh, right? He upheld the ways of the Most High. Okay, so that's a beautiful thing. And I'm sure his father taught him that, because it said he did it after his father Amaziah. So that's the righteous path, all right? The scriptures say you teach a child in the way that they should go, and when they are older, they shall never depart, all right? Continuing reading, it says, "And he sought God in the days of Zechariah, who had understanding in the visions of the Most High. And as long as he sought the Lord power Yahweh, the Most High made him prosper," right? So, bear with me 1 second. So not only was he, starting off as a righteous king, but he adhered to the prophet Zechariah, all right? He listened to Zechariah. He obeyed the words of Zechariah. And see, that's what a righteous king does. A righteous king obeys the prophet of his time, all right? That's what causes you to be blessed, by listening and obeying to the words of the prophet that the Most High has set up, because the prophet just carries the word and the decrees and the commandments of the Creator, the Most High, Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai. So if you listen to the prophets, you'll be blessed. But if you disobey the prophets, you're going to get judged. right? And and there's many examples of that in the scriptures. You can go to the commonly known instance with King Saul and Samuel and the Lord telling Saul to kill off all the Amalekites, and he didn't do that, and it resulted in King Saul being taken out of the throne seat and being judged, and him also losing his sons before he even lost his own life, right? Or we can go into King Zedekiah not listening to Jeremiah and being carted off into captivity by the Babylonians, and him also losing his sons and his own life, right? So it's a wise thing for a king to listen to the prophets. And Esau's in the rulership right now, and we're prophesying against his kingdom. Scriptures say that the prophets before us has prophesied against many kingdoms, and we're doing the same thing in today's time. And Esau doesn't give a damn about the prophets. He doesn't listen to the prophets. He doesn't take heed to the words of the Lord. Instead he fights against it, and that's why you're seeing his kingdom crumble at the rate that it's crumbling. And he's doing everything in his power to try to succeed in his wicked devices and his wicked plans, but it's all going to backfire on him because the prophets are telling him. Us as the prophets, through the spirit and power and grace and mercy of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh, we're telling them, look, the Lord is against you. He's not with you. So you fighting against us is fighting against the Lord. And we know, there's countless examples of what happens when you fight against the Lord. Us as a nation, as the Hebrew Israelites, we're an example of what happens when you go against the Lord. Okay? Look at the dire state we're in as a nation. We have no economic strength. All right? We have no military strength. We have no power throughout the earth. That's because we fought against our power. We went against our power. But let's go into how Uzziah was blessed, all right, for being a righteous king. Verse 6, it says, and he went forth and warred against the Philistines and broke down the wall of Gath and the wall of Jabneh and the wall of Ashdod and built cities about Ashdod and among the Philistines. And Yahweh helped him against the Philistines and against the Arabians that dwelt in Gebal and the Mehunims. And the Ammonites gave gifts to Uzziah, and his name spread abroad even to the entering in of Egypt, for he strengthened himself exceedingly. And, yes, he strengthened himself, but he was only able to strengthen himself and win these battles and win these wars because the Most High was behind him. Why was the Most High behind him? Because he was obedient. He was an obedient king. He was listening, and he was adhering to the prophet Zechariah, right? Continuing, it says, verse 9, moreover, Uzziah built towers in Jerusalem at the corner gate and at the valley gate and at the turning of the wall and fortified them. Also he built towers in the desert and digged many wells, for he had much cattle, both in the low country and in the plains. Husbandmen also, so he had farmers. He had a lot of farmers and men that, tend to the land, and vine dressers in the mountains and in Carmel, for he loved husbandry. So he was very, because when you go into the word husbandry, basically means a farmer, someone that tends to the land. So he basically loved working the land, building off the land. So basically, anything that had to do with farming, right? That was Uzziah's pleasure. That was his, a pastime of his that he enjoyed. All right, that was one of the things that brought him joy, was building off the land, farming the land, plowing the land, having workers work the land, and seeing the result of his hands, which should be the joy of any man, right? Wanting to see the result of their hands being put to work and seeing the result, the fruit of your hands, all right? The fruit of a man's labor, that should be the desire of a man anyways, to see the fruit of your labor spring forth. But let's continue back in this 2 Chronicles, right? The 26th chapter, okay? We left off on what verse was that? Yeah, verse 10, dealing with the husbandry. So let's go to verse 11. It says, moreover, Uzziah had an host of fighting men that went out to war by bands, according to the number of their account by the hand of Jael the scribe, and Masaiah the ruler, under the hand of Hananiah, one of the king's captains. The whole number of the chief of the fathers of the mighty men of valor were 2,600, and under their hand was an army, 300,000 and 7,500, that made war with mighty power to help the king against the enemy. So Uzziah had a great army, a great band of men behind him listening to his charge, all right? Listening to his decrees and fighting for him for the glory of the kingdom, right? It's just like you go into David and his mighty men. Well, Uzziah had his own form of mighty men. And that shows you the tradition and the legacy and the heritage of Israel was passed down, throughout generation. Kings learn from other kings, right? Not every king was a righteous king. Not every king was a wicked king. But, the righteous kings that desired wisdom, of course they will follow the footsteps and the traditions and the paths that was laid before them to show them the right way of how to rule a nation, all right, and how to please their power, their creator, while they're ruling the nation, okay? So it says, verse 14, it says, and Uzziah prepared for them throughout all the host shields and spears and helmets and habergeons and bows and slings to cast stones. Now, if you don't know what a habergeon is, let me go ahead and get the definition for that. A habergeon is a sleeveless coat of mail or scale armor, so a form of armor, right? So he was decking out his men, his army with the necessary equipment to go to war, right? Great equipment to be able to defeat the enemy. So all these things was boosting up Uzziah's recognition and fame, all right, throughout the land. Verse 15, and he made in Jerusalem engines invented by cunning men to be on the towers and upon the bulwarks to shoot arrows and great stones withal. And his name spread far abroad, for he was marvelously helped till he was strong. So he even built great inventions to help, protect Jerusalem, all right? So his armory was decked out. He had great inventors working for him. So, the kingdom was thriving under his rulership. And eventually all this went to his head. And we're about to get into that, how it led to him becoming prideful in a sense. Verse 16. So this is after he became strong and renowned and well known. But when he was strong, his heart was lifted up to his destruction. For he transgressed against the Lord power Yahweh and went into the temple of the Lord to burn incense upon the altar of incense. So he's from the tribe of Judah. Uzziah is from the tribe of Judah. He's not a Levitical priest. He doesn't come from the line of Aaron. So he wasn't supposed to do that. Right? Now we know that the Lord shows favoritism in certain instances to certain men, but this is not one of those instances where the Lord is willing to show favoritism to Uzziah for breaking a very, very serious commandment. All right, only the Levitical priest was supposed to enter into the temple and burn incense unto the Lord on behalf of the nation. Verse 17. And Azariah the priest went in after him, and with him fourscore priests of the Lord that were valiant men. So these were strong priests that were very confident and steadfast and headstrong in the commandments of the Lord and the will of the Lord. It's verse 18. And they withstood Uzziah the king and said unto him, it appertaineth not unto thee, Uzziah, to burn incense unto the Lord, but to the priests of the sons of Aaron. So it said, this don't pertain to you. You're not supposed to be burning incense. This is to the sons of Aaron, the Levitical priesthood, right? It says, but to the priests of the sons of Aaron that are consecrated to burn incense, right? It says, you got to understand too, going back to the tabernacle, the Levites, they weren't given their own section of land. You know how like you had 3 tribes on the north, 3 tribes on the west, 3 tribes on the east, 3 tribes on the south. The Levitical priests, they didn't have their own dwelling places, all right? They worked within the inner confines of the tabernacle, all right, tending to, the Holy of Holies, the temple, all right, the sacrificial atonements, right? So this is going back to the tabernacle of them having a particular job that only pertains to them and no one else. So the priests are basically rebuking him, all right? It says, continuing in verse 18, it says, For thou hast trespassed, neither shall it be for thine honor from the Lord power Yahweh. Then Uzziah was wroth and had a censer in his hand to burn incense. And while he was wroth with the priest, so he was wroth. And when you go into that word wroth, which shows you he developed a lot of pride and became very egotistical, because for him he got rebuked, and a righteous king would have took the rebuke and be humbled and repented and dropped down on his knees and asked the Lord for forgiveness. But instead he became wroth. With wroth means to be angry. So he felt that because he was the king, he shouldn't be getting rebuked by these priests. So even though he transgressed, he was angry that he got rebuked, right? So continuing, it says, then Uzziah was wroth and had a censer in his hand to burn incense. And while he was wroth with the priest, while he was angry, the leprosy even rose upon his forehead before the priest in the house of the Lord from beside the censer of the altar. So here it is. He got the curse of leprosy put upon him in front of the priest, right, amongst the temple, which the form of leprosy, all right. Your melanated skin being turned to paleness, all right, to look like a albino, for an example. That was a curse, and that was a huge embarrassment to let the rest of the nation know that you was unclean, or that you trespass against the Lord power Yahweh. And he's the king. So this is even more embarrassing. So now the king is unclean. Right? Verse 20. And Azariah the chief priest and all the priests looked upon him, and behold, he was leprous in his forehead, and they thrust him out from thence. So they kicked him out of the temple, because now you're unclean. See, and you have a clean leper and an unclean leper. A clean leper is have you seen a full albino person? All right. The whole skin is basically turned inside out. But he only had a leprous spot on his forehead. So he was unclean. He was an unclean leper. Right? It says they kicked him out. Himself hasted also to go out. So he was embarrassed and ran, because the Lord had smitten him. Verse 21. And Uzziah the king was a leper unto the day of his death, and dwelt in a several house, being a leper. And when you go into what a several house is basically, let me look it up real quick. Let me see. Yeah, so a several house goes into like a segregated place, because in the law, an unclean leper is to be put away from the nation. So according to the law, they had to cast off Uzziah. As the king, he had been cast off. So he dwelt in a place where unclean people dwelt. All right. And this is the king being brought very low. So this is an example of how pride goeth before destruction, right? The scriptures say pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty look before fall, right? It says, for he was cut off from the house of the Lord, and Jotham his son was over the king's house, judging the people of the land. So until the day he died, he was a leper, and his son Jotham took his stead. Now the rest of the acts of Uzziah, first and last, did Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amos, write. So Uzziah slept with his fathers, and they buried him with his fathers in the field of the burial which belonged to the kings. For they said, he is a leper, and Jotham his son reigned in his stead. So he was buried with the rest of the kings, but it was known in his memorial, even to this day, because I'm reading it, obviously, that in his memorial, his remembrance was he was a leper, because he wanted to be prideful and transgress against his power, and let the fact that he was a king from a young age get to his head to where he couldn't be rebuked. So yeah, I just wanted to do a lesson touching on how pride is not a good thing, and Uzziah is one of the examples of that. If you wasn't familiar with this account, Lord willing, it was edifying. Until the next time I say, Shalom.